housekeeping items. There we go. So we're going to record this session so that others who couldn't make it can watch it afterwards. You're welcome to leave your camera on. You're welcome to have it turned off. If you leave it on, know that you'll be in the recording. At any point, you can ask questions in the chat. We will answer those at the end. We have a ton of time for questions and answers at the end. But do know that if you ask a question, it's going to show your name in the chat, which is totally fine, but we just want you to know. All right. So here with me today, well, I guess I probably should introduce myself first. So for those of you who haven't heard one of our other presentations, my name's Amber Watson. I'm the Director of Academic Advising here in the College of Science. And I also have with me Danielle Massey. She's our Assistant Director in the Advising Office for the College of Science, and she's going to be helping us do the questions and answers at the end. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I have a pretty brief presentation. If you've attended one of my other presentations, this one is significantly shorter than the ones that I've done previously, because mostly I want to give you just some really basic information and then have a ton of time to do questions and answers. Right now, we have a fairly small group. I think there's like 19 of us total. So when we get to the questions and answers, we may even just open it up so that you could ask your question out loud if you wanted. We'll just kind of play it by ear when we get to that point. But what we're going to talk about for now, I'm going to give you an overview of what Global Quest is. We're going to talk about who it is a good fit for. And I'm going to give you some things to think about as you're making your decision and determining whether this program is the best fit for you. And then, like I said, the primary goal of this presentation is really to have lots of time for questions and answers at the end. All right. So presumably, you know a little something about Global Quest, but maybe not. Maybe the first time you heard of it was when Danielle sent you the email telling you that we were having this presentation. So I'm going to go really briefly over what is Global Quest. So Global Quest is a study abroad opportunity specifically for first-year students where you can study abroad in the spring semester of your first year. Typically, you are not allowed to study abroad in your first year on a traditional study abroad, but Global Quest is designed specifically for students in their first year. The College of Science this year, if you're a student in the College of Science, which presumably you all are because that's why you're here, the only location you're eligible for this year is the American College of Thessaloniki in Thessaloniki, Greece. You might see, if you've looked on the website, there's a site in London and maybe Germany or maybe only London. But either way, if you're a College of Science student, the American College of Thessaloniki is where you're eligible to go if you want to do this program. I've been to I've been to Thessaloniki and I've visited our NUN students who go to this site. It is a really, really cool place. The food is delicious. And I imagine it will be much warmer there than it will here in Boston in February. So there's some distinct advantages to participating in this program in Greece. If you're interested in participating in the program, you have the option, it's not required, but you have the option of living in an LLC based around students going on this Global Quest experience. What that means, if you don't, hopefully you're familiar with the concept of LLCs because you've probably already given your choices, but if not, essentially what it is it's a floor or a hall or multiple floors in a residence hall designated to students who share a similar interest. So we have a College of Science LLC. If you're in the Honors College, there's Honors LLCs. There's LLCs if you like gaming. There's all kinds of LLCs. But if you're interested in this program, you can participate and live in the LLC for Global Quest. The reason you might want to do that is you're going to meet all the people that you're going to go abroad with, because you'll go in a cohort of students. So when you typically study abroad and you want to go to, let's say, Italy in your third year, you might be going by yourself, or you might be going with maybe one other Northeastern student. But this program is designed that you're all going at the same time, living in the same place, and going to the same university. So you don't have to do the LLC if you already have a roommate, if you already have an LLC picked, if you already have other plans, that's totally fine. You can still go on Global Quest without doing the LLC. But if you if you are still not sure where you're going to live, it could be good for you to participate because you get to know everybody you're going to be traveling with in the spring. All right. I know this is a very long list with a lot of majors on it, so I'm going to keep it up here for a minute. Also know that this list is also on the Global Quest website, which we will share in the chat so that you can, if you haven't already been to it, you can know where it is and go to it. I apologize, some of these got cut off. It did not do this in my dry run, but you get the gist of what these are. These are the programs that are the best match for the Global Quest program in the spring. You might not see your major on here. And if that's the case, it means that you can't participate in the Global Quest program in the spring. However, it doesn't mean that there aren't a ton of other opportunities for you to have a global experience while you're here at Northeastern. In fact, you may even be able to study abroad in Greece in a different capacity as an upper class student. But the reason why these majors are listed is because there are direct courses that will move you forward in your curriculum. And in fact, I'm going to talk about those in just a minute. But if you're one of these majors, you are welcome to participate in Global Quest. You are eligible, you are allowed to participate in Global Quest. If you're not one of these majors, I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but also there's a ton of other options that you can do while you're here, and your advisor will help you in the fall explore some other options other than Global Quest. So again, this is on the website, so you don't need to try and grab a screenshot or whatever. This exact list lives on the website, which I believe Danielle will be, if she hasn't already, put in the chat. So what can you expect from Global Quest, or how does the curriculum match up? Will you still be on track if you go on Global Quest? If you're one of those majors on that previous slide, the answer is yes, you will still be on track for the most part. There are some caveats, which I'll talk about in a second. But this is not all the classes that are available, but these are to show you what major courses are available for our College of Science students. So you can see there's a couple entry-level business courses. So if you're in one of the combined business majors, there's some good choices for you to start that side of the degree while you're in Greece. You can see that we'll have both Calc 2 and Calc 3. So if you have some version of AP, you still might be able to do a calculus course in your spring semester. We have several upper level psychology courses. So if you're behavioral neuroscience or a psychology major, there are some good choices there. The bio inquiries, if you're any of our bio-based majors, so biology, behavioral neuroscience, biochemistry, that's your second level bio course. And then if you have AP, if you're coming in with AP bio, you could move on to genetics because you'll do inquiries this fall, and you would be able to do genetics there in the spring. You can see we have physics 2, and really importantly, because most of our majors will be in Orgo 1 in the spring, we have Organic 1. So you can see there's a really good selection of pure major courses that are exactly identical to what you would be taking here if you stayed here in the spring. So for the most part, if you're in one of those first majors I mentioned and I showed you, you really will be eligible to stay on track and to take the courses you would take here. You are just doing them in a different location, basically. So we get a ton of questions. I love this little graphic, Danielle, put this up for us. We get a ton of questions about study abroad in general and how that works with pre-health and if you're still eligible and if it still counts. And the answer is yes, especially in this particular instance, because even though you're going to go to Greece to study, the college in Greece is actually an American university, which is accredited by the same accrediting agency that Northeastern is accredited by. So your transcript will be from an American college, and that is fully accepted by medical schools, vet schools, dental schools, etc. So if you're pre-health and you're not sure how study abroad factors into your plan, this is actually a really good way that it can fit because you're going to an American university and those will be eligible to cover your prereqs for those health profession programs. All right, here's some things you should think about. Some of you may already know, like you may have been like, I'm a biology major, I can afford to go, I've already checked it out, sign me up, I'm going to Greece, cool, wonderful. I still want you to think about some things. For those of you that are much more on the fence, here are some of the things you should think about as you're considering whether this makes sense for you. The first one is, all students will be required to take a culture course while they're there. Listen, I think you should take a culture course. You should probably learn about Greece if you're going to go live in Greece for 4-ish months. However, it is good for you to know, because if you participate in a traditional study abroad program, you typically are not required to take a culture course, and you have a lot more course options. The flip side of that is you wouldn't be doing that in your first year, because it's not allowed at Northeastern. But so I do not think this should be a deal breaker for anyone, but it is something you should be aware of and understand. Let's talk about AP, IB, and transfer credits and how those might impact your decision to participate in this program. For the most part, most of the AP you have is not going to affect what you do in the spring. If you have AP Bio, AP Psych, AP English, History, Political Science, all of that is fine. We can work around that. It's not going to affect your eligibility to go in the spring. It's not going to put you off track. Like, you're good to go. Here's the 3 instances where if you have these AP, IB, or transfer credits that I'm about to mention, you might want to consider whether this makes sense for you. First of all, if you're coming in with chemistry AP, that would mean that typically you would start organic chemistry in the fall, which means you would need organic chemistry 2 in the spring. Organic chemistry 2 is not offered in Greece. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker. Most freshmen take organic chemistry in the spring anyways, right? So most of our students don't come in with Chem AP, they take organic in the spring. The degree is designed around that. You could just not take a chemistry your first semester, take Orgo 1 and be on the same path as everybody else. The trade-off of that is that you're not sort of getting ahead, as it were, by using your AP credits early. So again, that's a really personal choice, and there is no right or wrong answer, but I want you to make an informed choice, so you need to kind of understand the impact of not having Orgo 2 while you're there. The second one is there's no upper level physics. So this doesn't really affect anybody other than physics majors. But if you're a physics major and you're coming in with Physics 1 and or Physics 2 AP credit, you're not going to have very much to take in Greece. You possibly could take Calc 3, but often if you're coming in with Physics AP, you're also coming in with some level of Calc AP. So you may sort of be past Calc 3 by the time you go to Greece. So, you know, you may want to consider whether this makes sense or whether you want to hold off and do a different program, you know, in your sophomore or junior year where you would have more choices and you could find a place that offered more upper level physics classes. So again, it doesn't have to be a deal breaker, but you would have a whole semester without physics. So that is really something to think about and consider whether it makes sense for you. The final one is, if you're a behavioral neuroscience student, if you have Psych AP, which is pretty common, you should take, and this is just something you need to remember, your advisor will also remind you of this when you have your appointment, but you should take biopsychology in this fall because it is not offered in Greece in the spring. There are other psych classes you can take, and there's chemistry, there's biology. You'll still be on track for your major, but we want you to take biopsychology early because that's really your first key behavioral neuroscience course. If you don't have Psych AP, you will do Psych 1101, Foundations of Psychology, in the fall, which means you'll have to wait for biopsychology until the summer at the earliest. This is not the end of the world. This also is not a deal breaker. It's just something for you to know so you're making an informed choice. It is okay to wait to take it. But again, that course tends to let students know if they're in the right major because it's really kind of that first behavioral neuroscience experience that you have. So again, you know, I think Physics AP and it, you know, is kind of maybe not your best choice to go on this program. Between Chem AP and Psych AP, it might still be okay and make total sense for you to go if you're you know, a biology or behavioral neuroscience major, but it is something for you to think about and consider. Here's the other thing. When you're talking with your advisor, starting next week. So I know everybody has different appointments, so you might not see us for a couple of weeks, which is totally fine. When you're talking with your academic advisor, you want to try, if you can, to save at least one new path category for the spring semester. Because your culture course that everybody has, there's several that you choose from, but everyone will take a culture course. Most of them cover at least one of these new path classes. So if you save one of these and don't complete it in the fall, that will make sure that you're doing something that isn't eating sort of a free elective space in the spring. It is not the end of the world or the worst possible thing to take just a free general elective in the spring. But if you have the choice, you could use a new path so you have room later to choose from other classes when you get back to campus. So SI is societies and institutions, and your advisor will know this too. So certainly you can write it down, but we'll have these conversations with you too. But SI, societies and institutions. DD is difference and diversity. IC is interpreting cultures, and ER is ethical reasoning. For the most part, almost every single College of Science major does not cover these automatically. So these are courses you're going to be picking one way or the other. Sometimes AP covers them, and definitely you could have a culture course abroad that covers them. The registration period is technically for Global Quest is technically open now. It opened on the 1st, but it's open all the way till October 1st. So I don't want anyone sitting there panicking and freaking out and thinking you have to have your decision right this minute. You have plenty of time to figure out if this program actually fully makes sense for you. On top of you having all the way till October 1st to opt in, you have through October 10th to opt back out with your deposit back. So, you have time to talk about your fall schedule with your advisor. You also have time, and you absolutely should schedule a full half-hour appointment with your advisor very early in the fall semester so that you can fully 100% solidify that this is the right choice for you. So don't panic, you have time, but I'm glad that you're thinking about it now because there are things you need to consider. Also, if you've already signed on the dotted line, or you're about to sign on the dotted line, or you're not sure you want to sign on the dotted line, either way, review the course maps online. I just want you to be fully aware of what classes you have, which ones are required, where you're going to have choices, what those culture courses look like, right? I want you all to make a really informed choice. If this program ends up being the right fit for you, awesome. You're going to have a great time. It's going to be beautiful. The food is so good. You're going to love it. If it's not the right fit for you, I want you to be able to make an informed choice and know that ahead of time. I know that was kind of a lot of information, but it was also fairly brief, I think. I don't know what time it is, but that's all the information I wanted to give you. I assume that there's probably quite a few questions and or will be as we go along. So like I said, mostly I wanted to spend time just being able to answer these kind of questions you might have. Are there questions, Danielle?
Yeah, there's one that I came in. So you answered a question about the pre-health, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if that question wasn't fully answered, definitely ask again. But the other question is, if a student has credit or takes a course in the fall semester that's on the required map for the student. So a good example might be a student that has AP Bio that takes inquiries in the fall. What happens to the spring?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in that particular instance, you'll move on to genetics, which is exactly what you would do if you stayed here in the spring. So that's why it's really important to understand how your AP affects your fall, which would then affect your spring. Certainly courses, they're required in that you need them if you need them. But if you've already taken it, they're not required in that like you have to repeat it because you have to. So certainly you can replace it with something else. The ideal situation is you replace it with something else that is still moving you forward in your curriculum. So bio is a great example of that. If you have inquiries in the fall, you'll take genetics and or microbiome in the spring, and you'll be totally on track doing very similar to what you would have done here anyways. If you take Orgo 1 in the fall, as an example, there is no Orgo 2. So you can choose to still go, but you're replacing your chemistry course with some other choice that maybe isn't actually moving you forward in the curriculum in the same way. So hopefully that kind of clarified. Required is, it's required assuming that you actually still need it.
And just to piggyback off that, just think about if you were to wait on taking Orgo 2, you would be waiting almost 8 months to take it again in the fall semester of 2022. So just to put that kind of in perspective, not a terrible idea. Our students used to put 6 months between it when they would take co-op between, when that's was our curriculum. So students did fine with it, but just to be prepared that you'll want to keep really good notes for when you go back into Orgo 2 in that fall semester.
Yeah, and sometimes Orgo 2 is offered in the summer, so there is some possibility you could catch it up in summer 1, but there's zero guarantee that it will be offered. So it's definitely a risk that you would wait all the way till fall, like Danielle was talking about.
I've had a couple questions about financial aid and scholarships and just kind of what they should do for that.
Yep. So the very specifics are on the website, which I think you posted already for them, right, Danielle? Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole page about like cost and that kind of thing. My understanding is, and I looked over this today, but so I think I'm right, but it is clearly on the website too, so you need to confirm. But tuition is just tuition. You pay tuition in the spring just like you would here. You're still paying through Northeastern, and then Northeastern pays the college, so you don't, that's all exactly the same. I believe, if I remember right, there was a $7,000 program fee that covers housing, transportation, and some activities. In Greece, I believe that covers some meals. For some students in the other countries, none of the meals are included. Financial aid is a harder question to answer because everybody's package is so different. Typically, if financial aid would pay for your tuition at Northeastern, it usually pays for tuition it pays for study abroad tuition also, because you're still just paying Northeastern tuition. The piece that is like trickier, because it really is dependent, is that program fee. So presumably, if you have financial aid that pays for your housing now, it would potentially be able to be used for that program fee. But that is really an excellent question to ask directly to financial aid. There is a Global Quest scholarship for all students. It was not clear to me on the website how a student would apply to it. So I encourage you, if you're interested in that, I mean, everybody should be interested in that. You should at least attempt to apply for it, right? You should email the Global Experience Office, and ask them what that looks like. I don't know if they apply it automatically. I don't know if you have to fill something out. I tried to find out, but I couldn't. It didn't seem clear on the website to me. So email them to ask about that. But there is some money to offset that program fee cost. And I think on the website it said $3,000 to $5,000. So that's a pretty significant chunk of the $7,000. So I think, Northeastern's trying in whatever way they can to make it as attainable for as many students as possible.
Do you know if there's a way for students to connect with students that participated in the study abroad or went to Greece before, or specifically Global Quest?
So Global Quest existed previously, but our college did not participate in it because the places we went were not compatible with the College of Science courses. So there's not really like a whole cohort or two of students who've done this before, because we've sent students to Thessaloniki through our NUN program, which is a fall program, for a very, very, very long time. We've worked with them for years at this point. This is our first time working with them in the spring semester. And the reason why it's open to so many majors is because we've really worked with them to offer the same classes you would take here. You could reach out to the NUN office, which is literally nun@northeastern.edu, to see if they could connect you with a student who attended the Greece program in the NUN way. It's a very similar, I mean, it's at the same university. I believe you're staying at the same hotels. Like, it's, you'd get enough in your conversation with them, I think, to get a decent idea of what it's like. I also really hesitate to do this, but I actually think in this case it's probably useful. You can go on Reddit and post your question there in the Northeastern channel. Listen, you're going to find all kinds of things on there, and they may or may not be accurate. But I think in this case, that could actually be a good way to connect with some NUN students who went to Greece. Take everything else on there with a grain of salt. But I do actually think if you wanted to, you could. Someone would probably respond pretty quickly and say like, "I went to Greece. Let's chat," kind of thing. Otherwise, ignore Reddit, please.
And there's another question about fees and things like that. I'm going to say that those would be best answered by the Global Experience Office, specifically the Global Quest team. I'm on their page right now, and I can see that there's even a bot to chat with if you wanted to. Their email address is located there, but I'll even just post it. It's geo@northeastern.edu. So any of those questions, and I've definitely emailed this particular email address a couple of times, and they're usually fairly quickly because there's multiple people that monitor that inbox. So if you do have any questions about finances or just kind of fees and things like that, I would definitely recommend talking with them. There's a question in here of when should this students thinking about it or has signed on the dotted line, when should that be brought up to their academic advisors?
Excellent question. So you should definitely bring it up in your advising appointment, because we want to make sure that, for instance, if we're helping you pick or we're talking about what new path you should take in the fall, we would maybe try and put you in one so that you'd have some other choices for your Global Quest semester in the spring, right? So that's really relevant information that we would want to know while we're talking about your fall schedule. As far as picking your actual spring classes in Global Quest, that will happen in the fall semester when you have a full big appointment with your advisor, because they'll do a whole program plan and that will show you from start to finish in the 4 or 5 years or whatever path you're going to take to get to graduation. But absolutely bring it up so that we're aware and that we can then potentially, tweak your schedule for the fall so that you're really set up for the spring. So a good example of that is if you have Chem AP and you have decided, you know what, I'm not going to do Orgo in the fall because I really want to do this program. So I'm going to do something else in the fall so that I can do Orgo while I'm there in the spring. That's exactly what we would need to know. So when we're talking about your fall schedule, we can give you other options. We can make a note of that kind of thing.
Do you know about the professor quality at Thessaloniki? It's because the courses are rigorous and would be preparing students for upper level classes.
So I have no idea about the professors, to be honest. I can tell you, though, that every single one of those classes that are being offered, our faculty members worked with those faculty members to make the class identical. Some of these classes, for instance, bioinquiries, did not exist in Thessaloniki until we said that we were going to do this program. And so they have shared the syllabus. They have worked with those faculty members to make sure that the bioinquiries version in Thessaloniki is equivalent and at the same level that it is here at Northeastern. And also, I think if a professor's good or not is totally subjective, and one person loves a professor and one person hates them, and they've sat next to each other in the same class all semester. But I can tell you that the classes are fully equivalent and of the level of what they would be here. The other thing is this is a new partnership. We have a partnership where primarily Greek students can do their first 2 years in Thessaloniki and then transfer to Northeastern to finish out their degree for a Northeastern degree. So the idea is that those students should also be qualified to come here and pick up where their program left off. So ideally, we wouldn't want them to not be prepared for the classes here either. So hopefully that was helpful in that question.
Do you know about the living situation, whether it's residence halls or hotel, and if gender inclusive housing is part of that?
It's a really good question. I can tell you what I know of how it existed for NUN. I'm going to presume it's going to be identical to that, but Geo can clarify for sure. in NUN in the fall, the students live in 2 hotels in Thessaloniki. So the university or the college is sort of on the outskirts of Thessaloniki, and there are buses that take students there and back from the hotels. The hotels are in Thessaloniki, in the like sort of city proper. I think one of the hotels is the Metropolitan, and don't quote me on that. It's been like 2.5 years or something since I went. But so the students stayed in hotels, and then you could take a bus to campus and a bus back. But then Thessaloniki is fairly walkable, so you could walk once you were at your hotel. I don't know the answer about gender inclusive housing. I don't know how they match roommates. I know that Northeastern in general has a process for gender inclusive housing, and I would hope that that is also applied for students who are studying on other campuses. I just don't, I can't promise that, but it exists on campus, so I would hope and assume that it exists any place we send students, or at least in a place where we send students where we also control the housing. But again, either GEO or the housing office would be able to actually scratch that. You should just go to GEO. They'll be able to answer that question like definitively for you.
We are caught up in the
Any
chat.
other questions? All right. We also, at this point, there's only 16 of us. I lost a few people. Maybe this isn't the right fit for them already. I don't know. If you want to just like open your mic and ask a question, you are totally welcome to do that. You can keep typing. I'm not going to keep you here staring at me if no one has any more questions. So I'll wait like maybe 3 minutes. But if you have any questions you want to know, you're welcome to either just open your mic and we can chat. You're welcome to type them in. And if not, awesome. Then everybody gets a little bit of time back and, we'll go from there. I do think this could be a really cool program, especially if you're coming in with no or some limited transfer credits. I do think this could be, like I said, we refused to send students in previous versions of this because it did not align with our curriculum, and students would have not kept on track with the curriculum. And so I'm pretty excited that this is actually, for most students, a really good way to take the exact same classes, just in some other place.
There's a question on how long is the program with the addition of summer course and summer course with credit? I'm a little confused by that question. Are you asking?
I actually think I have an answer.
Okay.
Because so there is a possibility this is not a guarantee, but there's a possibility that if you wanted to, you could continue and take summer classes in Greece as well. The GEO is working on the visa process and regulations with that right now, so that's not a guarantee. It ends in plenty of time for our summer 1 classes. So I asked this question when I met with GEO a couple weeks ago, and if you go there and you can get home or here to Boston in plenty of time to take summer 1 classes. In fact, I think you have several weeks where you could maybe even like travel in Greece for a week or 2 and then come back for summer 1 classes. There is a possibility that you could take summer 1 there. And also there's a possibility that you could participate in some research while you're there. But all of that summer stuff is still being worked out because of the visa regulations for how Greece allows students in the country. So you would hear more information about that as that all gets solidified through GEO.
How do Northeastern Accelerate courses fit in?
When I say like transfer, AP, IB, I mean Accelerate too, right? Anything that you've earned credit for and done before you start in the fall, that's all kind of in that same bucket for me. So if you're in Psych 1101 in Accelerate, then, and you're a BNS major, let's just say, that's actually perfect. You can take biopsych in the fall, you can take an upper level psych of some other, there are several to choose from in Greece. You'll also take chemistry And biology, like you'll be in the almost identical semester that you would be if you were here on campus. Same thing if you're taking college writing, for instance, right? That just opens up space for you either in the fall and or spring. So yeah, accelerate. So I'm assuming I answered the question, but if not, totally re-clarify in the chat. But accelerate classes are all kind of considered like transfer stuff because you've done them before you started here in the fall, basically.
Do you know if the spring break matches the same time as Northeastern spring break?
That is an excellent question that I have zero clue about. I have no idea. Geo would definitely know what their academic calendar looks like. I have no idea, actually.
I can say when I did my study abroad, many years ago, I got an extra week. So I don't know if I had 2 weeks of spring break, which was lovely. I don't know that Thessaloniki does that at all.
Yeah, no guarantees about that.
Is housing, so during spring breaks or any breaks there, do you know if housing is covered? Like,
yeah,
could a student stay in housing during the break?
So during spring break, absolutely. It's a hotel, it's paid for the semester, it's your room, from the program start to the program end. If you want to stay in Greece after the semester ends and you're not enrolled in summer, assuming that's an option, that's when you'd have to kind of find your own housing. I can tell you, I went 2.5 years ago in the fall to see our NUN students, and hotels were, relatively speaking, very affordable there. So if you wanted to travel around Greece, I think it's like a pretty affordable place, or it was pre-pandemic. I don't know, the whole world's like flipped upside down at this point. But so once the semester's over, then your housing's no longer covered. But the whole semester, regardless of breaks and that kind of thing, your room is your room and it stays your room the whole time. So hopefully that clarified and answered. Any other questions?
Do you know the timeline for the spring semester, start to end date?
You'd think I would have written this down, but I did not. And I don't think it's on the website because there are multiple, or at least when I was poking around earlier, because there are multiple sites and those all have different start times. I know that it ends in April because I specifically asked whether if students went to this, they could come back and take summer one classes. So I know it ends in April because our summer one starts early May and there's plenty of time for that. You'll start in January. I just don't know how close to the new year you'll start. I want to say it was like the second week in January to the third week in April. But you won't start a whole lot later than that, and you won't end a whole lot later than that for sure. You might start like a week earlier in January, and you could end a week later or a week earlier in April. Do you see the dates on there anywhere, Danielle?
I'm looking and I'm not finding it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Gio can answer that for you definitively, but it is close to what our spring semester, start and finishes. Any other questions? Out of curiosity, since there's so few of you, either like type in the chat or like do the little thumbs up or whatever. How many of you are like, I'm in, sign me up, let's do it, I'm going to Greece? Anybody? Not yet? I mean, that's totally okay. Oh, there we go. Nice. All right, a couple of thumbs up in the view. Cool. So definitely talk to your advisor about it in your orientation meeting. The conversation is really just going to be so we make sure your fall schedule really is aligned and set you up to go in spring. And then spring will, planning will happen in the fall. So for pre-med, we have talked to our pre-med. I saw, I think Julianne's message there. For pre-med, we've talked to our pre-med and pre-health office, and they have assured us that because it's an American college, having your prereqs, so if you do orgo and bio, those kinds of classes there, is totally acceptable, 100% okay. Med schools are going to accept those credits just like they would if you did them at Northeastern or you did them at wherever in the US. The other thing is, I personally think this is aligned really well for pre-med, because typically if you're pre-med, and this is not true all the time, but if you're pre-med, you're also trying to get out of here in 4 years because you have like 14 more years of school. And if you're trying to get out of here in 4 years, your timeline to take your MCAT is very tight because you have to go all the way through biochemistry and all the way through physics to be able to be prepared to take the MCAT. And so that usually happens between your sometime in your 3rd year. And so if you try and do a traditional study abroad in that plan, it can happen, but then you have to pick a place where you could potentially take a biochemistry and a physics course so that you're on track to take the MCAT. Whereas this program already has exactly what you need that you would take here built into it. So I actually think this is a pretty strong option for students who are pre-med, who are also on a tight timeline. If you're pre-med and you're 5 years, or you're pre-med and you're going to take a gap year, like, you have tons and tons of options. If you're not, you still have options, but they're maybe not as many. And so this is actually a pretty good program. Look, I'm not trying to talk you into it. I don't get commission. You all should do it if it works for you. You shouldn't do it if it doesn't work for you. But I do think it's going to be good for pre-med.
For this program, the students, do they have to return to the Boston campus before they return to their home once the program ends?
Good question. No, you wouldn't have any. Oh, so actually that housing question might have meant in Boston, so I should clarify. This is true for when you're on co-op as well. If you study abroad or you go on co-op outside of the Boston area, then you fully move out of your residence hall. You don't pay for your residence hall and you move out. And then you move back in when you're next in classes in Boston. So there wouldn't be a room for you to come back to unless you were taking summer 1 classes and living on campus in summer 1. But from Greece, if you're taking the summer off, or maybe you're doing summer 2 instead of summer 1, you would just go home, or you would just do whatever you wanted to at the end of your semester in Greece, and you would move out of your residence hall in Boston at the end of fall. You would take your stuff or put it in storage until you're next back in classes on campus. Hopefully that clarified the housing issue. Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I can stay here for longer, but certainly don't feel obligated to just sit here with me. If you don't have any more questions, that's okay too. I'll wait like 1 minute and then we'll let everybody go. It'll be the longest 1 minute ever. We can cut this part out in the recording if there's no more questions.
You have a lot of faith in my editing abilities.
I think it seems to have slowed down. I think we kind of answered most people's questions. You're welcome to email COS Advising if you hang up and realize there was a question you had wanted to answer and you had forgot about. GEO is going to be the best resource for, housing, transportation, visa regulations, meal plan, like all of that kind of stuff. The GEO office will be able to tell you way more than we can, the exact start dates. And if one of you finds out, could you send it to us so we could know? I also could just ask them. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Hopefully it was really useful and you got some good information to have. I just want you to make an informed choice. If it's a right choice for you, awesome, we're gonna help you go. If it's not, that's okay. We'll help you figure out how to have a global experience some other way. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next couple of weeks for your advising appointments, and then we'll see you in the fall.